Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I know that your podcast feeds are bombarded every day with episodes, so the fact that you come back and choose to listen to this podcast does not go unnoticed. So a big heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for listening to my dulcet tones in your earballs every day. Now, if anybody listening out there has any kind of problem, whether they've got a broken oven or they've got a nasty stain on a t-shirt, whatever it might be, what do? You Google it, right? Well, I'm going to let you into a little secret. When those nasty software bugs and problems arrive with technology in a business and they end up on the lap of a senior IT software engineer, they Google it too. But what do they do when they cannot find the answers that they need? Well, today, Robin Purohit, co-founder and CEO of Peritus, is joining me again on the podcast. And many of you may remember our last conversation where we talked about the state of technical support for open source communities and how its benchmark study measured its impact. Well, since our last interview, Peritus has launched the Peritus Assistant, which is available as a Chrome extension, which is, in essence, a Grammarly for technical support. The Peritus Assistant uses AI to source and rank over 25 million answers and tips and publish content on Stack Overflow, related community and product vendor forums from previous conversations, and reported GitHub issues. And essentially, it's providing DevOps professionals and application developers with recommendations to help them answer support questions on community and vendor sites. But enough scene setting from me. He's officially friend of the show as he's returning, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US so we can get Robin back onto the podcast. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. But for anyone that missed our previous conversation, can you just remind the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so Robin Purohit. Right now, I'm CEO of Peritus.ai, which is based in Silicon Valley, but we have offices in Canada and India as well. So I've had this is my third decade in the tech industry. Spent the last 20 years as a software executive in Silicon Valley. So I've had great growth curves in the infrastructure segment. Peritus and Mercury, we sold those companies for over $20 billion total and ran big software portfolios at HP and BMC, and also done a couple of startups, 2 exits to HP and Salesforce. So, but I'm super excited to be working in the AI segment and happy to talk to you about that today.
Cool. And since we last spoke, you released the Peritus Assistant, which is, I believe, available as a Chrome extension. And I've seen it described as Grammarly for tech support, which is incredibly cool. But can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about what that is and who you're aiming it at?
Yeah, sometimes I call it Grammarly for geeks. It's kind of a better, memorable line. Yeah, so we have a free extension available on the Chrome store. It's been out there since about March. And we're really focusing on taking the friction out of developer self-service with this product. So our observation is, the modern developer is overwhelmed with complexity and pace of technology change. As you know, there's probably 180,000 open source projects and counting right now. And if you look at Postman, there's, I think, 50 million APIs that they now have registered. And the go-to resource traditionally has been places like Stack Overflow, community forums where people kind of do the research and try to get better answers. But what we've seen is that 70% of the questions never get answered. So we think, well, that sounds like a problem that we should probably, you can be helpful on, right? And we just see open source taking over more and more of the industry in all its various forms. So that's where we're soaking in. And so right now we're very focused on the cloud native developer, who's dealing with a lot of very fast technology change provided by a lot of different suppliers, both open core as well as cloud. And that's the initial support for the Peritus Assistant.
And before you came on the podcast today, I read that the Peritus Assistant uses AI to source and rank over 25 million answers, tips, and published content on Stack Overflow that's related to community and product vendor forums from previous conversations and reported GitHub issues, which again is incredibly cool, especially if you're a techie trying to find that answer. But how has it been received by the tech community?
Yeah, good. We have several hundred people that have signed up and using the product now. And so I think we're on to something. But yeah, our core technology is called we call a recommendation engine. So I think we talked about this the last time. People are used to recommendations engines from, say, Netflix, where it recommends the next movie, or the Amazon Assistant that, as you're browsing the web, it tells you, the best product to buy on their site. So we want to help people, shop for answers, if you think of it that way. And so what we do to accomplish that is we continuously ingest content from GitHub, Stack Overflow, all the vendor forums, particularly in the cloud native industry, and any published content that's trusted. So it could be documents, blogs, YouTube videos we're starting with now. And so we're indexing and using our ML algorithms to surface the best pieces of content that are most relevant at a question that you're looking at or writing. Wherever you're going to do it, right? So our assistant kind of sits on your shoulder and follows you around as you're either researching or asking questions, and gives you insight sourced from all those different places. So 25 million is already dated, by the way. That's a stat from, I think, when we announced the product in March. We're going to be doing an announcement the next month that will significantly expand both the coverage and the amount of objects in our system.
Incredible, really, isn't such a fantastic resource. But what open source technologies do you support?
Yeah, so we started in the cloud native segment because we see there's a huge interest there in the enterprise to consume these technologies, and a shortage of knowledge, right? So we started with the obvious. Kubernetes and Docker have been in the product for 3 months. We've now added Elastic, Mongo, and based on request, some of the kind of classic open source databases like Cloudera, and some of the contemporary ones actually like Snowflake, which isn't open source, but clearly hugely popular now with the dev community as a next-gen cloud database. So that's kind of the coverage today. The exciting thing is we're very shortly about to expand the coverage to probably 15 other products and forums. And we put it in product a self-service request. So if you see something that we don't cover that you want, you just request it, and then we will add it into our system in a matter of days.
And you were talking a moment ago about the shortage of knowledge. So can you tell me a little bit more about the actual knowledge gap with regards to these new technologies that every business is relying on and demanding? Yeah. But where does that knowledge gap fit in?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-sided problem. We've talked about the first side, which is the developer trying to get help faster as they're working, right? And typically they start on Google with a keyword search, and they always end up in one of these forums, which has very rich knowledge sources. The trouble, as we said, these questions are very rarely answered quickly. And the problem is that the people who really know the best are way too busy. Right, so they're putting best effort, whether a community industry expert or a product owner. They don't have time to respond to all these questions coming in. So they're looking for ways of automating and scaling that knowledge, and quite frankly, automated ways of even writing that knowledge down in a way that can be consumed. So we're trying to feed both sides of the wire, giving a tool to the people that are creating products to scale their knowledge and shift it left into the public domain, and make the people who are trying to consume knowledge find it easier to get as they're working, wherever it might sit. And so if we accomplish that, then we'll have kind of built what we call an AI knowledge network that takes the open source consumption to a whole new level.
And I'm glad you mentioned the AI bit there, because we are serving techies, and some techies are a little bit suspicious of anything that says AI in it, because they've been burnt by all those business things that have been bought that do not contain AI, just have AI in the thing. So can you tell me about how you're using AI to enable this new generation of knowledge networks?
Yeah, so super important. Our big decision we made in the company is to provide out of the box, or what the AI industry sometimes calls pre-trained value. So for all the products we've talked about, the ones that will be shortly available, we basically do the machine learning work ahead of time, not just taking the content, but taking a look at how to match that content to a long form question that you'd see in a support ticket or a forum post. and analyze, okay, what is that person really trying to look for? What's the problem they're trying to solve? And how do you best match that to the content that's been ranked highly by the community? So we can zone in on the most likely answer. The most important thing is not to overpromise. There's no magic box. I wish we could build a Godbox that you could answer any arbitrary question and we give you the perfect answer. But the reason we call it a recommendation engine is that we can give you a much more highly probable answer, giving the context that we understand than you will on a Google search or just hunting and pecking on your own. But as you use it, and as hopefully millions of people will use this, our ability to refine those recommendations and make them smarter will just continue to improve. So that's why we kind of started with the freemium model to get the momentum going.
And as that continues to improve, what we're saying, 2025 Godbox 1.0?
Yeah, we're not going to give up. And when we talk about a knowledge network in particular, we think, I think the last count, there's 26 million developers in the world. I think that's probably an underestimate. So, our vision is if you can take this massive growing community of techies, and connect them where they're working in a company, working in public, working on a product, if we can connect them together in a new way to dynamically connect, need to answer, then we'll really have revolutionized the industry. So it's not an overnight thing, but I think the opportunity is absolutely there with the rate of technology change that we can leverage.
Absolutely. And of course, one of the big trends this year is the trend of hybrid working, and teams are scattered everywhere, some in the office, some out of the office. They're working anywhere, everywhere, and on any device. So for the people that are supporting these workers, what are the biggest challenges facing businesses and support teams in the future, do you think?
Yeah, I think just being able to quickly mobilize on things. People have a lot of personal interruptions. I don't know what your life has been like, but as we all work from home or our remote camper van, wherever we are, you have a lot of distractions. So I think the more we can help people build on what they know, build on what the community knows to be responsive. Most people do want to be responsive and helpful that work in the support industry. If you can help them even while they're dealing with all those distractions, interruptions, wherever they are, I think that we're providing value to them.
And what excites you about the future and the role that Peritus will play in that future too? Yeah,
to me, the exciting thing is that the rapid adoption of open source APIs, whether it's for on-premise or in the cloud, is just exploding and it's hitting every industry. So while we started initial focus on the cloud native industry, which is kind of a good bowling pin segment for the company to begin with, that revolution is hitting every single vertical segment. Telecommunications with 5G networks. It's hitting, every commercial business is realizing they have to be a digital business. That means opening up APIs that developers can use to extend and integrate their data. And so I think this broad-based digital revolution of open source and API enablement for legions of software developers to create interesting new things means there's both a massive market for us, but also tremendous innovation in potential in the future. So the key thing is to, connect people together so that they can help each other and create that really exciting digital future we all enjoy today.
And if we do have a techie that could be sat listening to our conversation today anywhere in the world, and they've been working on a problem for all day, and at the end of their shift, they're all Googled out and thinking, hey, maybe this can help me. Could you possibly walk me through how they could get up and running and possibly find the answer that they're looking for?
Yeah, so it's fairly easy. If you go to the Google Chrome store and search on Paritis, so it's Peritus, Paritis, you'll see our extension, and we worked hard to make the install experience painless. So in 30 seconds, you'll be up and running. And then if you go to Stack Overflow or any of the vendor forums that we support, as you're clicking on answers or posts that you're interested in, you'll immediately see recommended answers that are sourced from all those different locations we've talked about. And you can navigate down to it. Hopefully, it will help you get to the answer in minutes rather than several hours, or sometimes people take all weekend to hone in on that problem.
Oh, man. Well, anyone listening, there's a challenge for you. If you do have a tech problem and you use Paritis, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. I would love to hear how it has helped you. But a question I always like to ask my guests since we've last spoken, there's a new feature I've introduced here, and that is asking tech leaders if there is a song or piece of music that has helped them in their career, it inspired them, or just helps them get their head in the zone before going on stage or something like that. Is there a particular song that stands out for you so we can get your song on the playlist?
Well, I always found the best motivational speaker in history, probably the music industry at least, is James Brown, right?
Yeah.
I've done my share of keynotes, so I also have a James Brown talk track in the back of my head before I get on stage. So I say get up off of that thing, to me, seems pretty timely, given that we're all trying to get off the couch and participate in the world again right now.
What a great tune. Oh, man, I love that. And finally, for anyone listening that just wants to find out more information about Peritus, or what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter right now. And again, you can check us out on the Chrome store to get the download. And please send me your feedback on the product.
Excellent. Well, I'll add those links to the show notes. And I challenge everyone listening to give it a try and find that Chrome extension and check out the Grammarly for Geeks or Grammarly for Tech Support, whichever way you want to look at it, and let me know how you get on. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me on the podcast again today. It's always a pleasure, and maybe we will meet at a tech conference one day soon, because things seem to be opening back up.
I certainly hope we can. Thanks for having me.
Peritus Assistant uses AI to source and rank over 25 million answers. And it currently works with Kubernetes, MongoDB and Elastic, with plans to support additional open source technologies in the coming months. But if you are a techie that finds an answer or solution to a problem that you've been struggling with after listening to this episode today, please, I want to hear from you. So whatever it is, no matter how small, how big, or if you couldn't find the answer that you need, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Just send me a quick message on there @NeilC.Hughes, or visit my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. So I would generally love to hear from people and how useful this tool is, especially as I come from an IT support background many, many years ago. And a big thank you to Robin for coming back on the podcast and sharing the great work that they're doing there. But that's it for today's episode, so a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.